I just wanted to take some time and make a video about my experiences of racism in America. Now, if you're watching this video, you're probably thinking, hey, he's a white guy. What's he know about racism in America? Well, I've experienced and seen several examples of it in my lifetime, and I'd just like to share those. Right after I graduated from college, I was a teacher in the St. Louis public schools. And I can remember when my principal called me in to discuss my career path. And I told him that I wanted to move into administration. Well, my black principal told me that the administrative path was not open to white males, and that I should just take that off my radar and not consider doing that. A few years later on, I got a job working for Monsanto Chemical Company in St. Louis. Well, now, I wasn't hired directly by Monsanto. I was hired as a temporary and made quite a bit less than I would have made had I been hired directly by Monsanto. But I was told that Monsanto couldn't hire me directly and couldn't give me the benefits of health insurance and whatnot that a Monsanto employee would get, because I was a white male, and that when my replacement was found, I would train my replacement and I would be let go. And that's exactly what happened. So because I was a white male, my wife and children were denied health care. So I have experienced racism in the United States. I can remember several years later, I had 3 friends from Nigeria. They were going to school in the United States, and I can remember one of them telling me that his friends in Nigeria would ask him, "Aren't you afraid of the white people in the United States?" Because in Nigeria, all they know about the United States is white people and white police officers abusing black people. And he told me, he said, I tell him, no, I'm afraid of the black people in the United States. All of my friends are white. So those are some examples I've experienced. I know that the statistics show that there is far more black on white crime than there is white on black crime. Just some examples. Black gangs have in several instances surrounded and beat up white people simply because they're white. You know, I know that it's safe for a black person to go into a white neighborhood, but most white people are afraid to go into a black neighborhood. And then there's the example of the knockout game. Now, this is where young black males select a unsuspecting, innocent white person, usually an elderly white person, to just knock them out. Punch them in the face, knock them out. That's another example of racism in America. I remember when I served in the Arkansas legislature, there was another legislator, a black lady, that brought a bill before one of the committees, and it was a hate crimes bill. And she wanted to get that bill through the committee. And I asked her if she thought it was right that if a black person committed a crime against a white person, that they should get greater punishment than if they committed a crime against a black person. And she informed the committee that hate crimes could only be committed by white people, and that legislation could never be used against a black person. I remember years later when O.J. Simpson was on trial. I can remember a black lady telling me that it was okay for black people like O.J. Simpson to murder white people because it just evened the score for all of the wrong that's been done to black people by white people. These are some of the examples I'm familiar with racism in the United States. Now, we see the Black Lives Matter group protesting things like Michael Brown's death in Ferguson. every single example that's been in the news of a black person killed by police officers, the evidence has conclusively proven that the police officers acted properly. I just want you to think about this. A police officer, whether he's black or white, puts himself in danger to protect the rest of us. At times, he or she is called upon to make a split-second decision that will determine whether he'll go home to his family that night or whether his wife will be a widow and his children fatherless. That's the kind of pressure they're under. And all of us need to realize that we need to obey the police when they're making split-second decisions. The time to contest what they've done is later on in a courtroom. What is the desired outcome of the whole Black Lives Matter movement? Is it that no black person is ever arrested? Think about that. Most crimes committed by black people are committed against other black people. So if the police stop arresting black criminals, who are the victims of that? It's the vast majority of honest, hardworking, law-abiding black people in this nation that will suffer from that. That is an insane outcome. I don't know how anyone could want that outcome. The people that believe that police officers, whether they be white or black, are out gunning for young black males believe a fiction. In fact, the data shows just the opposite. Police officers bend over backwards not to harm or even offend black people. But they cannot subject themselves to death at the hands of black criminals. They have to defend themselves. I can remember when O.J. Simpson was on trial, hearing a black lady tell me that what he did was absolutely fine because it made up for all of the abuse of white people against black people. What is the NFL protesting against? You know, they say they're protesting against systemic racial abuse in the United States. Well, I'm just a white guy, but I can tell you there is systemic racial abuse in the United States. But by and large, it's by black people against white people. There is far more black on white crime than there is white on black crime. This whole protest is so offensive. They're protesting the flag and all the people that have given their lives in defense of that flag. You know, now it's said that the NFL players have a right to protest. Well, I am a lawyer, and I don't believe they have a right to protest. Their employer, the NFL, has a right to fire them if their actions negatively affect the business of the NFL. Well, it's obvious that it is negatively affecting the business of the NFL, and the NFL ought to take this thing in hand, and they ought to fire any athlete that will not honor the flag and the veterans that have died for it and fought for it. Now, I guess you could argue they have a right to do that, but their employer also has a right to fire them for doing that. And also the fans have a right to say, I'm no longer going to support your bad behavior. So, Mr. Millionaire football player, you're not going to get any more of my money to offend me and my nation. And so there's consequences for that. And you know, it's mainly the Democratic Party that supports this. And historically, the vast majority of the people in the KKK have been Democrats. And have we forgotten that the Republican Party was organized to end slavery? That Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican president? Now, if you're watching this, you may think, well, you're crazy. You haven't walked a mile in my shoes. Well, all I can say to you is, you haven't walked a mile in my shoes. Because if you had, you would understand how offensive this NFL protest is to me.